Welcome everybody and welcome to the final week of Professional Experience 1. And very soon now you're all going to be out on your first professional experience in the not too distant future. So it's the countdown has begun, and this final week is set up to really make sure that you are prepared and organised to go out into this first professional experience. So we're really going to look at the expectations, the requirements for you for this first practicum, what you can expect, what may happen, how you'll be assessed. So all those questions that I think probably many of you have had for the last 10 weeks, hopefully in the Collaborate sessions and in the on-campus classes this week, we can address all those queries and questions that you may still have. This lecture will also try to address all of the things that you may be thinking about for this first professional experience as well. So it's very important that you see this lecture right up until the end, because I will be going step by step through everything that will be happening for you on your first professional experience. So let's begin. The first port of call is, of course, your placement. So I'm hoping for the majority of you now, nearly all of you, I'm sure, know where you're going. And I'm hoping that you have looked up the information, especially in relation to maybe that first assignment. You know what to expect now because you have been informed about the school, you've built up a knowledge about the school, you know where the school is, you know the times that they operate. All of that information also about your placement is up on the Sonia website, including placement details about when you should arrive at the school, if you need to contact the school before the placement begins, if there are email addresses there for your mentor teacher, etc., etc. All of that information is up on the Sonia website. Now, sometimes things do change a little bit with your placement in relation to maybe the starting time when you're required to be there on your orientation day. So you need to keep checking your Sonia details right up until the day that you go to Prac. So just in case there are some last minute changes in relation to the timing of the day, etc., that you're supposed to be there. If there is a last minute change, the Professional Experience Office will also email you and hopefully ring you if there is something like that. But again, they'll put those details up on the Sonia website. Included on the Sonia website is also copies of all the paperwork that will be completed for your practicum. So you should actually download that paperwork just onto a USB if you're not taking a laptop with you to the school, etc., so that you've got a copy of all that paperwork that you can actually share with your mentor teacher. Your mentor teacher also gets a copy of all the paperwork as well, but sometimes things happen in mail outs and emails and things, and so if your mentor teacher hasn't been given yet a copy of the paperwork, you can have that paperwork with you from day one, and you can download that for your mentor teacher, give them the USB so that they can copy the paperwork as well. So that's how we try and do it. We try and cover all bases. So all paperwork will be mailed to the school. All paperwork will also be emailed to the school, but it is also important that you download that paperwork and take it with you to your placement in case the other two things haven't arrived yet or been somewhere in cyberspace or in the mailing, etc. You've got the paperwork to give your mentor teacher as well. Okay, so are we ready? Because I'm hoping that this last few weeks has prepared you and organised you for this first placement. I know some of you are anxious, and I know some of you are hopefully very excited as well, because we're about to let you off the ship now, and you are going to swim ashore into that first placement, and I'm sure you're going to come back really successful and hopefully with a very enjoyable, although it will be challenging, experience behind you. So this is why I want you to be as prepared as possible for what you can expect and what is going to be required of you for the 5 weeks that you are out on your first placement. So what can you expect? Well, let's talk about the observation days and the orientation day. So firstly, you will have an orientation day. That will start firstly. So observation days, orientation days. The orientation day is the day where you will get acquainted with the school and orientated to the school. So that is something that when you first go to the school, you will usually meet with the coordinator, the Practicum coordinator of the school, who will then show you around the school, get you familiar with the important things like canteen and where the bathrooms are and all of those things that you do need to know. Some schools are very big and some schools are quite small, so it will depend on how long that may take. But the coordinator will also introduce you to the policies of the schools, the executive of the school, all of those things that you'll need to know about when you are part of the working team in the school. You will then sit down with your mentor teacher and you'll be introduced to them, of course, and then you will start to plan the next 5 weeks and what those weeks will look like for you. So this is where it's very important for you to have a very frank and open discussion and conversation with your mentor teacher when you are starting to plan those first few weeks, first week, and then the subsequent weeks after that. Ask your mentor teacher what they expect from you for the next 5 weeks while you are taking their classes and are in the school. So what are their expectations? What do they require from you? What do they want you to be able to achieve by the end of these 5 weeks? So that's really 3 very important questions you should ask about what is required of you while you are taking the classes and at the school that you are at. That will obviously will include playground duties, staff meetings, etc. So what are those requirements? What are also requirements of expectations of that mentor teacher? What will they expect of you over the 5 weeks that you are there and they are observing you and supporting you? So what are those expectations from the mentor to you? And also, what do they want you to achieve on this first prac experience? Now, if you ask those 3 questions to your mentor, then you are bound to be on the same page from day one with what is expected and what is required. You should also then maybe share with the mentor what your expectations are for the prac, what you want to achieve by the end of these 5 weeks. And when you've had that conversation, then hopefully there's a really good starting point to the prac and it will flow really well for both you and the mentor. So it's important to be on that same page from day one. What I find sometimes when things happen in relation to things maybe going wrong in practicum experiences, it's sometimes this miscommunication. And the miscommunication usually happens very much at the beginning when there is a different set of expectations from the mentor compared to the expectations and requirements of you as a pre-service teacher. So we want to make sure that that is really cleared up and clarified from day one. Okay, so you need to have that conversation. Again, if you want to ask further about how to go about this in classes this week, you can certainly ask some questions around that. Everything that you will need to know about the practicum is going to be in your handbook. Okay, now the Professional Experience Student Centre handbook you can download from the Professional Experience Student Centre site, and there should be one on your Sonia website as well. So that handbook is something that you should have a look at now before going out onto prac. So this week, have a flick through, have a look at the ins and outs. All the requirements are there as to the roles that everybody plays in the practicum experience, what is important around attendance, if you have to be absent, certain requirements around who to key contacts, etc. So all of that is there, assessment of the prac, etc. So please have a look at the handbook this week and get familiar with it. This handbook is also given to your mentor teacher as well. They can either download it as well as copies being sent to the school. So please make sure that your mentor teacher has a copy of the handbook as well. Now we have a fabulous support network for you. So you're never doing this practicum by yourself, okay? So we try and give you this support network that will advise you, that will obviously support you, guide you in this first prac experience. So we have obviously at the top of that support network tree your mentor teacher, who's going to be a teacher who will be guiding you and advising you through every lesson that you do in the school. They will be supervising you, they will write your report, they will be in every class that you teach. They will give you written feedback on your teaching and how you're going. They will fill out an interim report, a halfway mark, and then at the end as well. Okay, so they are going to be the person that you will be talking to on a daily basis. You'll be shadowing, etc. In that, just going back to the observation days as well, because I did talk about the orientation day and didn't move on to the observation days, you do have a couple of observation days delegated where you'll shadow your mentor teacher so that you can observe the classes that you're going to teach before you teach them. Now, we've only scheduled a couple of days for that, but that is negotiable. You may need more than 2 days for an observation in your first prac. In fact, you might need the first week to do observation in this first prac experience. So again, on that first day, that's part of the conversation that you will have around how many days you might need to observe the classes that you're teaching before you actually take on those classes to teach those classes. So that is negotiable. Some students get very confident quickly and they like to take the reins maybe a little bit earlier on than others. Some mentor teachers will like you to observe for some time before you take on the class. So again, it will be something that you might begin taking one class a little bit earlier and then take on another class a little bit later in that first week. So in that first week, after the orientation day, it is totally negotiable as to how many days you might observe and become familiar with the school, with the classes, and shadowing your mentor teacher on those days so that you become better acclimatized with the school, with the way that the teachers teaches, their teaching style, and getting a really good opportunity to sit in the back of the classroom and actually observe the students that you're going to be teaching. So negotiable in relation to how many observation days there has to be. Okay, so the support network, if we go back there, we have an in-school coordinator as well that helps set up the prac in the school and helps coordinate the mentor teachers and the student teachers in the school. Sometimes you will go to a school where there will be more than just one student teacher in the school. There could be several of you in one school, depending on how big the school is. Also, there might be student teachers from other universities as well. So most schools have what they delegated an in-school coordinator to coordinate the practicum. So of course you can also ask them for advice and support as well as the prac is progressing. You also have a liaison, a school-university liaison, who oversees university advisors in the school. So you may not see them in the school. They will be liaising and supporting the university advisor as such. Now, the university advisor is your first port of call, and they're a very experienced teacher, maybe one of the academic staff here at the university, although we also bring in very experienced educators who come in just for this practicum experience to be the university advisor, and they will support you on this prac. So they are like the liaison person between the school and the mentor, yourself, and the university, like a conduit. So all their details on how you can contact your university advisor will be up on the Sonia website this week, just a couple of days before the prac begins. So please make sure that you look up those details and find out who your university advisor will be. Your university advisor will be then in contact with you, usually via email, so you must make sure that you're always checking your university email while you're out on prac. That's very important because your university advisor will contact you through there. If you're in an in-zone school, which is close to a campus here at whether the Coffs campus, Gold Coast or Lismore, you will have university advisors that will come out to see you while you are out on prac. So they will support you by email, but they will also come in out to visit. And they will also sit in on one of your classes to see how you are going and to give you extra advice and extra support. They will actually also be there for you in relation to the final report and help fill out the final report with the mentor teacher as well. So they're really a support network for the mentor, for you, for the school. So if you have any questions at all, any queries, any clarifications that you need, any advice, any support, if things are starting to go wrong, you might be away sick, something happens, all of those things, the first person you should contact is your university advisor. And they'll be able to come out to the school to help and advise you if you're in an in-zone school placement. If you're in an out-of-zone school placement, you will have a university advisor delegated to you as well, but unfortunately they won't be able to come out and visit. So the communication for you will be by email, by texting, by telephone, maybe by Skype. So you'll arrange a meeting where you can actually set up some frequent contacts and communication in that first week of the prac. So out of zone students, you do have an advisor as well, so make sure you know who they are and their contact details, and they are there for the same reasons as in-zone advisors, to support, give you advice. If you've got any questions and you need any clarifications, you need to contact them. Okay, lots to bring in, I know. So what are the requirements for this prac? Well, you've got to take at least a 50% of a normal teacher's load. Now that's again negotiable, and this again comes into your first conversations with your mentor teacher. What does that 50% look like for a teacher in the school that you are at? Because timetables will vary in different schools. Primary schools, you may only take 1 or maybe 2 lessons a day depending on the length of those lessons. In secondary schools, if you're going into the secondary school, you might be taking a Year 7 class and a Year 8 and a Year 9 class, depending on what makes up that 50% of a teacher's load in that school. But timetables vary as well as timing of lessons. Some lessons might be 50 minutes, some might be in secondary school still 40 minutes. Some in Queensland schools can be up to 90 minutes. So that's why it's important in that first conversation that you have with your mentor, you decide what a 50% of a normal teacher's load looks like in the school that you are at. It's going to be different from school to school. So that's why it's important that you talk with your mentor about what that looks like in the school that you are placed in. Now, if you have any questions, whether you think you might be doing too much over the 50% or too little under the 50%, you need to contact your university advisor, and they can also talk with the mentor and the school about negotiating that 50% load for you. Okay. You must, if there are any days that you can't complete, you'll have to make that up at the end of the prac. You don't just teach lessons, you're not just assessed on lessons. To be able to be accredited and to satisfy the requirements of the prac, you must complete so many days in school. So for Professional Experience 1, that's 25 days that you have to complete. Now please keep in mind that there may be a public holiday in the prac. Now, if there is a public holiday in the prac, depending on what state you are in, you will have to make that day up. So that will mean that you may end up going into the following week to finish that prac. So if there is a public holiday in the practicum, you will have to make that day up. Again, if you need anything clarified about the days and how many days that you are required to do, please talk to your university advisor. Lesson plans. We spent a lot of time on lesson plans and how to devise a fabulous lesson and how to devise a fantastic lesson plan in this unit. So I know you are all very proficient at doing lesson plans. You are required to have a written lesson plan for each lesson that you teach. That is a requirement of the prac, and that is what your teachers will expect. So you need to give yourself time to do these lesson plans. These plans need to be given to your mentor at least 24 hours prior to the lesson that you're going to be teaching. So therefore your mentor then has an opportunity to look at the lesson, give you advice about the lesson, see what you are planning for the lesson. Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it appropriate to the skills of that students? You obviously will talk to the mentor as you are planning, but you also need to make sure that you give that lesson plan to your teacher in advance so that they have time to comment on it and to see what you're going to be doing in their classrooms. Because remember, you are a visitor in the classroom, you are taking on their classes, and it is very entirely appropriate and only very respectful to make sure that you give your lesson plans to your mentor in advance for them to see what you are doing in their classrooms. Okay, so that's important. Okay, so we've got a written lesson for every lesson taught. Okay, and then your mentor will be able to observe your lesson. So your mentor has a lesson observation booklet, and that way they will be writing formal feedback for you on the lessons that you are teaching. And you'll get an opportunity to take that feedback, look at it, and then obviously it can be for you to guide you for the next lesson, reflecting on that, guide you as to what your plan for the next lesson and the lesson after that. Okay, so there's a structure to the lesson booklet which will allow for the observation, reporting, reflecting and commenting. So again, you can have a look at the lesson observation booklet. It is up on the Professional Experience Student Centre site so that you can go in and have a look at it and see how your feedback will be structured and how your mentor teacher will fill out that feedback. And actually it's all structured around, guess what? The Australian Professional Standards for Teaching. When it comes to supervision, okay, you need to be supervised by a qualified teacher at all times in a classroom. The duty of care is still with your mentor teacher. You are not to be left to your own devices in a classroom. This is your first professional experience, therefore you need to be constantly monitored and supervised by the mentor teacher. Now that is a legal requirement. and it includes playground duties, keeping students back after class, sport duties, roll call, all of those things you do with your mentor. You don't do by yourself, please. Now, if there is any concerns around this, that you are being left unsupervised, you need to contact your university advisor straight away and make sure that you are being supervised, please. It is a legal requirement, and I don't want anything to go wrong in a classroom when it was only you in that classroom. So please make sure at all times you are fully supervised. Sometimes your mentor teacher could be away, they might be sick, or something might happen. You will always have a casual teacher with you, an employed casual teacher, and that employed casual teacher must be in the room with you as well. Okay, so even if your supervising mentor teacher is away, there will be a casual teacher that will take their place. And you sometimes have to remind casual teachers of that. We also want you, and it's a requirement, to be involved in all aspects of school life. It is only one part of a teacher's duties, and what is expected of teachers is classroom teaching. I think what you're going to find from this practicum experience is how much else is in or is part of a teacher's day. So yes, you will have to do sport duties. You are expected to do playground duties. You are expected to attend staff meetings or faculty meetings or extracurricular meetings or work that your mentor teacher would be involved in. So all of the things that your mentor teacher has to do, you must do as well. We want you to get the whole school experience from this first prac and from subsequent pracs after this. Teaching, as I said, is only one aspect of a teacher's day, and sometimes it's the easier aspect. There is so much else that teachers are required to do as part of being an employed teacher, and we want you to see all that, become familiar with all of that, and be part of all that. So yes, if you have a bus duty after school, you will have to stay after school to do that bus duty. If there is a bus duty before school, you will have to do that as well. If there are staff meetings after school, you must attend those. So that is all part of what is required of you from this professional experience. As I said, you don't go into schools just to teach a lesson at 10 o'clock in the morning and then leave at midday when your lesson is complete. You have to be there before school starts. So make sure at least half an hour or more before school starts, or when your mentor teacher arrives at the school, and you are expected to stay after school for at least half an hour after school so that you can debrief with your mentor teacher or attend other duties and start preparation for the following day. So half an hour at least before school begins and half an hour afterwards. And that's just a rule of thumb, but you may have to go even earlier if the mentor teacher wants you to go earlier, or you may have to stay later if the mentor teacher wants you to stay later. So when it comes to the formal assessment, okay, so how does that work? All right, so we have a report that is going to be written up for you by your mentor teacher. Again, you can have a look at these reports in classes this week, and I will go through this in the Collaborate session as well. So there are two parts of the report. We call it the interim and the final report. So it's on the one report, but it is we actually fill it in halfway at the halfway mark, and then we fill it in at the very end, the final day of the prac. And it looks a little bit like this. This is just one page of the report for you. So what you can see, it's actually all based around the Australian Professional Standards for Teaching. So what is required for accreditation as a graduate teacher is that you are actually assessed out in the field in your professional experience on how you are achieving Australian Professional Standards of Teaching to the graduate level. So all universities, pre-service teachers, to be accredited as a teacher will have to be assessed in their professional experience on these standards to the graduate level, not to the proficient level and not to the highly lead teacher level or highly accomplished level, but to the graduate level. So you can see there how it's going to be filled in. On the interim side there, you can see that we have an ND, D, EE, NA box. Now the ND is for not demonstrated, the D for demonstrated, the EE for exceeds expectations, and the NA is not applicable. So sometimes, and you're going to be assessed on the 7 standards and the focus areas under those standards. Often there will be times where it will be NA because you just won't, and not applicable, because in a 5-week period you won't be able to cover all of those focus areas. Or it might mean that you just can't cover all of the focus areas due to the school you're at or the classes you're taking, or just the opportunities that you have within that 5 weeks. So NA might be ticked in those focus areas, and that's fine. That's not a problem. No one's expecting you to cover everything in your first prac experience. However, what would be concerning would be if you get a tick in what is the ND box, not demonstrated, because that means that that focus area has not been demonstrated in your teaching practice and should have been. You had the opportunity to do that and you didn't do it. That can be concerning. What we really want you to be ticked in is the demonstrated box, that you're demonstrating these to a certain ability as a pre-service teacher. The EE exceeds expectations. Well, that probably may not happen in a first prac experience, but if it does, that's a bonus. So if you get an ND box ticked at that interim stage, at the halfway mark, that is a real wake-up call for you to show that you must try and demonstrate that focus area by the end of the prac, so that then that can be ticked in the demonstrated box, okay? So that's when you must have a conversation with your mentor about how you can demonstrate that focus area in the following 2 weeks or so that you have in their classrooms. If you do get an ND in the interim report, you need to also alert your university advisor to that, and they can help give you advice as to how you might be able to demonstrate that in subsequent lessons. So please make sure you let the university advisor know if you get an ND ticked at the interim stage, please. What you don't want is an ND box ticked at the final stage. That could mean that you may not satisfy the requirements for the prac. Again, if you've got any questions or concerns about how this is, as I said, you should go through this report next week or in the week before you go out into prac and become very familiar with it. You can see this report on the Professional Experience Student Centre site and also on your Sonia site. So download a copy and have a look at it. And if you've got any questions or concerns, ask your tutor this week in class, or ask or email myself as well, please. If you are not fulfilling the requirements of the prac, you can be determined at risk of failing, okay? We usually don't want this to happen at all for you. So, however, it's not a fait accompli that you just pass a professional experience. So the thing is, if you're doing all the right things and you're doing all the requirements that you're expected to do, you shouldn't be at risk. So we have an at-risk procedure, and you can read about that in the Professional Experience Handbook. So it's a good idea to just become familiar with that. Some of the reasons that you can be put at risk are some of these things, such as if you are not showing the correct professionalism needed for this career, inappropriate conduct, obviously in relation to the code of conduct, which we've been through. If you're not adequately preparing for your lessons or implementing those lessons ineffectively, you're not writing effective lesson evaluations or lesson plans, etc. So again, have a look at our risk procedure and process in the Professional Experience Handbook. However, we don't just throw you out with the bathwater if you are at risk. We will set up a development support plan for you to give you as much opportunity to be able to be successful in this prac and give you an opportunity to get over that line. So there is a development support plan that's set up and negotiated by the mentor teacher and your advisor, our liaison officers and prac coordinators such as myself, practicum coordinators in the school, and then it will come to me as well. And we can actually set up a plan so that you can try to address those concerns that have come up in the practicum. So we'll give you an opportunity to do that. So don't get too panicky or anxious if this does happen, but be aware that we will have things in place for you to be able to, if you are deemed at risk, to be able to still be successful. But that will obviously be up to you as well. Okay. I know this is a lot to take in one lecture, so please come back to the lecture to actually revise things that I've been saying here. And of course, what I really want you to do is to start thinking about the questions that you still have, things that you still need clarification on, and bring those questions to your tutorials this week and to the Collaborate sessions this week. Because really, ultimately, what I want for you is for you to have a very successful and enjoyable first professional experience placement. And for that to happen, you need to make sure you know exactly what to expect and what is required of you. So spend this week going through this final week in the study guide, going through all the information that we have up on the study guide for you. And then, as I said, any questions or concerns you still have, make sure you address them to me or to your tutors on campus, please. Really important that you do that before going out. I wish you all the best in your first professional experience. I know it can be an anxious time, but I know it's also a very exciting time. I'm sure you're all chafing at the bit to get into schools and to actually start putting into practice all the things that we've been talking about here at university, in this unit and other units, and to get out into that big wide world of teaching that you so want to be part of, and enjoy the company of those fabulous students that you're going to find in your classrooms. Again, you can contact me at any stage throughout the practicum. If you need extra advice or support, I'm more than happy to help you. And I'm hoping that I will see some of you out in the schools in the Lismore region, as I will be going out and advising schools in this region as well. So hopefully I might see some of you in classrooms teaching. All the best for now. I hope you've enjoyed this unit. And I hope now that this has prepared you and you feel that confidence to go out into schools and enjoy that first placement.